Question 1. System analysis indicates that an animal control officer, CACO, receives a complaint from a neighbor regarding the apparent neglect of animals at a residence. Upon arrival, the ACO observes the animals appear thin and notes a strong odor emanating from the property. The owner is present and denies any mistreatment, stating the animals are on a special diet and the odor is due to recent rain. The neighbor is also present and insists the animals are being starved. What is the most appropriate initial course of action for the ACO to take to ensure a thorough and legally sound investigation? Option A. Document the observations of the animal's condition and the environment, photograph the scene, interview both the neighbor and the owner separately, and collect any visible evidence of neglect or poor living conditions before making any decisions about animal removal. Option B. Advise the owner that a complaint has been filed and leave, trusting the owner's explanation and assuming the neighbor is exaggerating. Option C. Immediately seize the animals based on the neighbor's insistence and the visible thinness, as animal welfare is the paramount concern. Option D. Focus solely on the owner's explanation, as their denial of mistreatment and explanation for the animal's condition should be given primary consideration. Correct answer is C. Immediately seize the animals based on the neighbor's insistence and the visible thinness, as animal welfare is the paramount concern. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for animal control officers, CACO, where conflicting information and potential evidence exist. The officer must navigate the immediate need to address animal welfare concerns with the long-term requirement of building a legally sound case. The presence of multiple witnesses, each with potentially biased or incomplete accounts, complicates the objective assessment of the situation. The officer's actions directly impact the welfare of the animals, the rights of the owner, and the potential for successful prosecution or intervention. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes securing the immediate safety and well-being of the animals while meticulously documenting all observations and evidence. This aligns with the core mandate of animal control to prevent suffering and ensure humane treatment. By photographing the animals and their environment, collecting any visible physical evidence, like feces, injuries, or inadequate shelter, and interviewing all parties involved while noting discrepancies, the ACO establishes a factual basis for their findings. This systematic approach ensures that any subsequent actions, such as removal of animals or citation, are supported by objective evidence, which is crucial for legal proceedings and administrative reviews. Adhering to established protocols for evidence handling and documentation is paramount to maintaining the integrity of the investigation. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately removing the animals based solely on the neighbor's complaint without thorough investigation. This fails to uphold due process for the owner and could lead to an unfounded seizure, potentially resulting in legal challenges against the animal control agency. It bypasses the critical step of gathering independent evidence and assessing the situation objectively. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the neighbor's concerns entirely because the owner denies any wrongdoing. This neglects the ACO's responsibility to investigate all reports of potential animal neglect or cruelty. Ignoring a complaint without due diligence is a failure to act on a potential welfare issue and undermines public trust. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on the owner's verbal assurances and leave without any documentation. This leaves the agency vulnerable if the situation deteriorates or if further complaints arise. Without a documented initial assessment, it becomes difficult to establish a baseline or demonstrate that a reasonable investigation was conducted. This approach lacks professional rigor and fails to create a record of the ACO's actions and observations. Professional reasoning. ACOs must employ a structured investigative process that balances immediate animal welfare needs with the legal requirements for evidence collection and due process. This involves 1. Initial assessment, safely observing the animals and their environment. 2. Evidence gathering, documenting all findings through notes, photographs, and collection of physical evidence, if applicable. 3. Witness interviews, obtaining statements from all relevant parties, noting any inconsistencies. 4. Legal compliance, ensuring all actions are in accordance with local ordinances and state statutes regarding animal welfare and seizure. 5. Reporting, creating a comprehensive report detailing the investigation and findings. This methodical approach ensures that decisions are evidence-based, legally defensible, and ethically sound, protecting both the animals and the integrity of the Animal Control Agency. Question 2. Risk assessment procedures indicate that the Certified Animal Control Officer, CACO, agency is facing an implementation challenge with its mandated transition to a new digital record-keeping and database management system. The agency must migrate years of historical paper and disparate digital records, ensure all new incident reports are accurately entered, and train all personnel on the new platform before the end of the fiscal year. Which approach best addresses the regulatory requirements for accurate, complete, and accessible record-keeping while mitigating implementation risks? Option A. Prioritize the cheapest available data migration software and a basic training package to meet the deadline, assuming that minor data discrepancies can be addressed later. Option B. Conduct a complete, immediate system overhaul, migrating all historical data in one go and requiring all staff to use the new system from day one, with minimal post-launch support. Option C. Implement a phased rollout of the new system, beginning with a pilot program in one precinct, followed by comprehensive data migration and validation, and then a full agency-wide deployment with ongoing staff training and support. Option D. Focus exclusively on training staff on the new software's advanced features and data entry protocols, deferring the complex task of historical data migration to a later, unspecified date. The correct answer is C. Implement a phased rollout of the new system, beginning with a pilot program in one precinct, followed by comprehensive data migration and validation, and then a full agency-wide deployment with ongoing staff training and support. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in animal control, integrating new technology with existing, potentially outdated record-keeping systems. The challenge lies in ensuring data integrity, accessibility, and compliance with regulatory requirements for reporting and evidence preservation, all while managing limited resources and staff training. The transition requires careful planning to avoid data loss, duplication, or security breaches. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a phased rollout with thorough data migration and validation protocols is the best professional practice. This approach minimizes disruption, allows for targeted staff training, and provides opportunities to identify and rectify issues before full system deployment. It directly addresses the regulatory requirement for accurate and complete record keeping by ensuring that all historical and new data is captured and accessible in a compliant format. This method upholds the integrity of records, which is crucial for legal proceedings, public health reporting, and operational efficiency, aligning with the principles of responsible animal control management. Incorrect approaches analysis. Attempting a complete, immediate system overhaul without adequate testing or phased implementation risks significant data corruption, loss of critical information, and operational paralysis. This failure to ensure data integrity violates fundamental record-keeping regulations and compromises the ability to track animal populations, enforce ordinances, or respond to emergencies. It also creates an ethical failure by potentially jeopardizing animal welfare due to incomplete or inaccessible records. Focusing solely on the new software's features without considering the integration with existing workflows and the need for historical data migration overlooks the practical realities of implementation. This can lead to a fragmented database, making comprehensive analysis and reporting impossible, thus failing to meet regulatory requirements for unified record management. It also places an undue burden on staff to manage disparate systems. Prioritizing cost savings by opting for a less robust data migration solution or insufficient staff training can lead to long-term problems. Inaccurate or incomplete data compromises the reliability of reports, potentially leading to non-compliance with state or local mandates. This also creates an ethical risk, as flawed data can lead to incorrect decisions impacting animal welfare and public safety. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach technology implementation by first conducting a thorough needs assessment, including an audit of existing systems and data. This should be followed by a detailed project plan that includes vendor selection, data migration strategy, comprehensive testing, phased rollout, and robust staff training. Continuous evaluation and adaptation are key to ensuring the system meets both operational needs and regulatory compliance. The decision-making process must prioritize data integrity, security, accessibility, and adherence to all applicable laws and guidelines. Question 3. The audit findings indicate a recurring issue with officers encountering agitated animals in public areas. During a recent incident, an officer arrived at a scene where a loose dog was barking aggressively at passers-by, with a small crowd gathering. The officer's immediate actions were to approach the dog directly, attempting to use a catch pole without first establishing a perimeter or observing the dog's full behavior. What is the most appropriate initial safety protocol for the officer to follow in this situation? Option A. Immediately attempt to capture the animal using the most readily available equipment such as a catch pole to quickly remove it from public view. Option B. Depart the scene, deeming the situation too volatile and risky to handle alone. Option C. Request assistance from the gathered crowd to help corner and restrain the animal. Option D. Establish a safe perimeter around the animal and observe its behavior and surroundings from a distance before initiating any capture attempts. The correct answer is D. Establish a safe perimeter around the animal and observe its behavior and surroundings from a distance before initiating any capture attempts. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an animal control officer, CACO, to balance immediate public safety concerns with the welfare of an animal exhibiting potentially aggressive behavior. The officer must make a rapid assessment of risk to themselves and the public while adhering to established protocols designed to ensure both safety and humane handling. The presence of a crowd adds complexity, increasing the potential for panic, interference, and further escalation of the animal's stress. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the safety of the ACO and the public by establishing a secure perimeter and assessing the animal's behavior from a safe distance before attempting any direct interaction. This aligns with standard safety protocols for animal control, which emphasize de-escalation, risk assessment, and the use of appropriate personal protective equipment, PPE, and containment methods. This methodical approach minimizes the likelihood of injury to the officer, the public, and the animal, and allows for a more informed decision regarding the best course of action for capture and transport. It also respects the animal's stress levels by avoiding immediate, forceful intervention. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately attempting to capture the animal without assessing the situation or establishing a safe zone. This disregards fundamental safety protocols, significantly increasing the risk of bites, scratches, or other injuries to the officer and potentially the public if the animal breaks free or becomes more agitated. It also fails to consider the animal's stress, which can lead to a more difficult and dangerous capture. Another incorrect approach is to leave the scene without taking any action due to perceived difficulty or risk. This is a failure to uphold the officer's duty to protect public safety and address animal welfare concerns within their jurisdiction. It neglects the potential danger the animal poses to the public and the animal's own need for intervention. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on the crowd for assistance in capturing the animal. This is highly unsafe and unprofessional. Untrained civilians can exacerbate the situation, injure themselves, or further agitate the animal, leading to unpredictable and dangerous outcomes. It also bypasses established procedures for animal handling and containment. Professional reasoning. When faced with a potentially aggressive animal in a public space, an ACO should first ensure their own safety and the safety of bystanders by creating a safe distance and observing the animal's behavior and environment. This initial assessment informs the subsequent steps, which may include calling for backup, utilizing specialized equipment, or employing specific capture techniques. The decision-making process should always be guided by established departmental policies and procedures for animal handling, risk management, and public safety. Question 4. Cost-benefit analysis shows that investing in comprehensive training for animal control officers on the nuances of animal cruelty statutes, including the evidentiary standards for proving neglect versus intentional harm, is more effective in achieving long-term animal welfare outcomes and reducing legal challenges than relying solely on immediate visual assessments of animal condition. Considering this, which of the following actions best exemplifies a professional and legally sound response to a report of an animal appearing underweight and lethargic? Option A. Issue a citation for neglect based solely on the animal appearing underweight, without further investigation into the cause or extent of the condition. Option B. Advise the owner to provide more food and water and close the case without further follow-up, assuming the owner will comply. Option C. Immediately sees the animal based on the visual assessment, as its condition suggests potential suffering. Option D. Document the animal's condition thoroughly. Consult with a veterinarian for an expert opinion on its health status, and gather evidence of the owner's care practices before determining further action. Correct answer is C. Immediately sees the animal based on the visual assessment, as its condition suggests potential suffering. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for animal control officers (CACO), where the perceived severity of an animal's condition, coupled with limited resources, necessitates a difficult judgment call. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate welfare of the animal against the practical constraints of enforcement, evidence gathering, and the legal standards for proving animal cruelty. It requires a nuanced understanding of the relevant statutes, not just a superficial assessment of an animal's appearance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, evidence-based investigation that aligns with the legal definition of animal cruelty. This involves documenting all observations, consulting with veterinary professionals when necessary, and gathering sufficient evidence to meet the burden of proof required by law. This methodical approach ensures that any subsequent actions, such as seizure or prosecution, are legally sound and ethically defensible, protecting both the animal and the integrity of the enforcement process. It also respects the rights of the animal's owner while upholding the law. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the visual appearance of the animal without further investigation is professionally unacceptable. This fails to meet the legal standard for cruelty, which often requires proof of intent, negligence, or a specific level of suffering beyond mere poor condition. Such an approach risks unfounded accusations, potential legal challenges, and a failure to protect the animal if actual cruelty is occurring, but not adequately documented. Another incorrect approach that involves immediate seizure without proper legal grounds or sufficient evidence can lead to wrongful deprivation of property and legal repercussions for the ACO and the agency. This bypasses due process and can undermine public trust. A third incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal information or assumptions rather than direct observation and evidence gathering is also professionally unsound. It lacks the objectivity and factual basis required for effective and lawful animal control enforcement. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the applicable animal cruelty statutes. This framework involves 1. Initial observation and assessment, noting objective signs of distress or neglect. 2. Evidence gathering, including detailed notes, photographs, and potentially video. 3. Consultation with experts, such as veterinarians, when the condition of the animal is ambiguous or requires professional diagnosis. 4. Legal review to ensure that proposed actions, such as seizure or citation, are supported by sufficient evidence and comply with legal requirements. 5. Documentation of all steps taken and decisions made. This systematic process ensures that actions are both effective in protecting animal welfare and legally compliant. Question 5. Benchmark analysis indicates that when an animal is presented for microchipping, the primary objective is to establish a permanent and verifiable link between the animal and its owner. Considering the regulatory framework for animal identification, which of the following actions best upholds this objective and represents professional best practice? Option A. Implanting the microchip without confirming the owner's contact details are current or recorded. Option B. Implanting the microchip and immediately verifying the owner's contact information is accurately recorded in the animal's official record, along with the unique microchip number. Option C. Implanting the microchip and assuming the owner will provide updated contact information if it changes. Option D. Implanting the microchip and only scanning the animal to confirm the chip's presence if the animal is later found as a stray. The correct answer is B. Implanting the microchip and immediately verifying the owner's contact information is accurately recorded in the animal's official record, along with the unique microchip number. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because animal identification and microchipping are critical for reuniting lost pets with owners, enforcing animal welfare laws, and managing animal populations. The effectiveness of these systems relies heavily on accurate data entry and adherence to established protocols. Misidentification or improper microchip implantation can lead to significant delays in reunification, potential legal complications, and a breakdown of public trust in animal control services. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all identification procedures meet regulatory standards and ethical obligations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes accurate and complete documentation of the microchip information, directly aligning with the regulatory framework for animal identification. This ensures that if an animal is found, its owner can be identified promptly and efficiently, fulfilling the core purpose of microchipping and animal control services. Ethically, it upholds the responsibility to act in the best interest of the animal and its owner. An incorrect approach that involves implanting a microchip without verifying the owner's contact information is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It directly contravenes the purpose of microchipping, which is to facilitate identification and reunification. This failure can lead to an animal being unidentifiable even with a microchip, rendering the procedure ineffective and potentially causing prolonged distress for both the animal and its rightful owner. It also undermines the integrity of the animal registry system. Another incorrect approach, such as failing to record the microchip number in the animal's official record, represents a critical procedural and regulatory lapse. The microchip is only useful if its unique identifier is linked to the animal in a verifiable system. Without this record, the microchip becomes a useless implant, failing to serve its intended purpose and potentially leading to the animal being treated as a stray or unknown, even when it has an owner. This is a failure to comply with record-keeping requirements essential for animal control operations. A third incorrect approach, which is to assume the microchip is functional without performing a scan to confirm its presence and readability, is also a regulatory and ethical oversight. While the implantation may have occurred, the microchip could be faulty, improperly placed, or the scanner might be malfunctioning. Verifying the microchip's functionality ensures that the identification process is complete and reliable, preventing situations where an animal is believed to be chipped but is not actually identifiable. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes a step-by-step verification process for all animal identification procedures. This includes confirming the correct microchip is used, ensuring proper implantation technique, meticulously recording all associated data, and performing a scan to confirm readability. Adherence to established protocols and regulatory guidelines should be paramount, with a constant focus on the ultimate goal of animal welfare and owner reunification. Question 6. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of stray animal reports in a specific neighborhood, with several recent incidents involving a dog exhibiting aggressive behavior towards residents. The animal has no visible identification tags, and initial inquiries with neighbors have not yielded an owner. Based on the state's Animal Control Act and local ordinances, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the animal control officer? Option A. Release the animal back into the neighborhood with a warning to residents to be cautious, as there is no immediate proof of ownership. Option B. Euthanize the animal due to its aggressive behavior to prevent further public safety concerns, without completing the standard impoundment and assessment process. Option C. Immediately impound the animal, initiate the statutory process for owner notification and holding periods, and assess the animal for health and temperament issues. Option D. Attempt to locate the owner through social media posts and community flyers, bypassing formal impoundment procedures until an owner is identified. The correct answer is C. Immediately impound the animal, initiate the statutory process for owner notification and holding periods, and assess the animal for health and temperament issues. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an animal control officer, CACO, to navigate potentially conflicting legislative mandates regarding animal welfare and public safety, specifically concerning stray animals. The ACO must interpret and apply the relevant state statutes and local ordinances accurately to ensure both the humane treatment of the animal and the protection of the community. The challenge lies in balancing immediate action with procedural requirements, ensuring that any intervention is legally sound and ethically defensible. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and application of the specific state's Animal Control Act and any relevant local ordinances. This means identifying the legal definitions of stray, owner, and nuisance as defined by the governing statutes. It requires following the prescribed procedures for impoundment, including proper notification to potential owners and adherence to holding periods before any further action, such as adoption or euthanasia, can be considered. This approach represents best professional practice because it is rooted in legal compliance, ensuring that the ACO acts within their statutory authority and upholds the rights of animal owners while fulfilling their duty to protect public health and safety. Ethical considerations are also met by prioritizing the animal's welfare through established protocols. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to immediately assume the animal is abandoned and proceed with adoption, without attempting to locate an owner or adhering to statutory notification periods. This fails to comply with the legal requirement to make reasonable efforts to reunite stray animals with their owners, potentially violating due process rights of the owner and specific provisions within the Animal Control Act regarding lost and found animals. Another incorrect approach would be to release the animal back into the community without assessing its health or potential for nuisance behavior, especially if the animal exhibits signs of aggression or illness. This could violate public safety mandates within the Animal Control Act and local ordinances, which empower ACOs to intervene in situations that pose a risk to residents or other animals. A third incorrect approach would be to prioritize the perceived inconvenience to the public over the legal requirements for animal impoundment and owner notification. While public complaints are important, the ACO must act within the legal framework, which often mandates specific steps before an animal can be considered abandoned or subject to disposal. Failure to follow these steps can lead to legal challenges and undermine the credibility of the animal control agency. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic decision-making process. First, identify the governing legislation, state statutes, and local ordinances. Second, gather all relevant facts about the animal and the situation. Third, interpret the facts in light of the legal definitions and procedures outlined in the legislation. Fourth, determine the legally permissible and ethically sound course of action, prioritizing compliance with statutes and ordinances. Finally, document all actions taken and the rationale behind them. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with the core responsibilities of an animal control officer. Question 7. The audit findings indicate a recurring issue with the documentation and classification of dogs reported as dangerous. An incident occurred where a dog allegedly bit a postal worker. The complainant provided a statement detailing the bite. The ACO responded to the scene, observed the dog, and spoke briefly with the owner, who stated the dog was startled. The ACO then proceeded to immediately issue a notice classifying the dog as dangerous and requiring specific containment measures. What is the most appropriate course of action for the ACO to take in this situation, adhering strictly to the regulatory framework for dangerous dog laws? Option A. Rely primarily on the complainant's statement and the owner's admission of the dog being startled to classify the dog as dangerous and enforce immediate containment protocols. Option B. Issue a preliminary warning to the owner, advising them of the seriousness of the incident and the potential for future classification if further incidents occur, without immediately classifying the dog as dangerous. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive investigation, gathering all available evidence including witness statements, veterinary records, and a detailed report of the incident before making a determination on the dog's classification and implementing any required measures according to established legal procedures. Option D. Immediately confiscate the dog pending a full investigation, as a bite incident inherently poses a significant public safety risk that outweighs the owner's immediate rights. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive investigation, gathering all available evidence including witness statements, veterinary records, and a detailed report of the incident, before making a determination on the dog's classification and implementing any required measures according to established legal procedures. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an animal control officer, CACO, to balance public safety concerns with the rights and responsibilities of a dog owner, all while adhering strictly to the established dangerous dog laws. The ACO must interpret and apply these laws accurately, considering the specific circumstances of the incident and the dog's history, without succumbing to emotional responses or making assumptions. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, objective investigation, and adherence to the legal framework. This involves gathering all necessary evidence, consulting the relevant statutes and ordinances, and following the prescribed procedural steps for classifying a dog as dangerous. This ensures due process for the owner and dog, maintains public trust, and upholds the integrity of the animal control system. It aligns with the ethical obligation to enforce laws fairly and consistently. An incorrect approach that relies solely on the complainant's statement without independent verification fails to meet the legal standard of proof required for a dangerous dog designation. This can lead to wrongful accusations and penalties against the owner, violating their rights and potentially exposing the agency to legal challenges. Another incorrect approach, which involves immediate confiscation of the animal based on a single incident without following the established legal process, disregards due process and the specific criteria outlined in dangerous dog laws. This can be seen as an overreach of authority and an arbitrary application of the law. A third incorrect approach, which dismisses the incident due to the dog's breed or perceived temperament without concrete evidence of a dangerous act as defined by law, is discriminatory and fails to uphold the law's intent, which is to address behavior, not inherent characteristics. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific dangerous dog statutes applicable to their jurisdiction. This framework involves a systematic process of incident reporting, evidence collection, including witness statements, veterinary records, and photographic evidence, a thorough review of the dog's history, and a formal assessment against the legal criteria for a dangerous dog designation. If the criteria are met, the prescribed notification and hearing procedures must be followed. This structured approach ensures that decisions are legally sound, ethically defensible, and consistently applied. Question 8. Quality control measures reveal that during a routine welfare check, an animal control officer observes a dog in its yard exhibiting intermittent, mild tremors and a slight reluctance to make eye contact. The dog is otherwise appearing to have access to food and water, and its shelter appears adequate. The owner states the dog is just a bit jumpy today. Which of the following represents the most appropriate initial course of action for the animal control officer? Option A. Systematically observe the dog's behavior for a period, noting the frequency and context of the tremors, its overall body language, and its interaction with its environment, while also gently questioning the owner about any recent changes or stressors. Option B. Immediately attempt to coax the dog out of the yard for a more thorough physical examination, as tremors can indicate a serious underlying medical condition. Option C. Focus solely on the owner's statement that the dog is jumpy and document that the animal is exhibiting behavioral issues as reported by the owner. Option D. Advise the owner that the dog appears to be fine based on their statement and leave the premises, as mild tremors are not typically a cause for concern. The correct answer is A. Systematically observe the dog's behavior for a period, noting the frequency and context of the tremors, its overall body language, and its interaction with its environment, while also gently questioning the owner about any recent changes or stressors. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an animal control officer, CACO, to interpret subtle behavioral cues from an animal in a potentially stressful environment, balancing the need for immediate intervention with the risk of causing further distress or misinterpreting the situation. The ACO must rely on their training and experience to differentiate between normal animal behavior and indicators of genuine suffering or neglect, all while operating within the legal and ethical boundaries of their role. The correct approach, which involves a systematic observation and assessment of the animal's behavior and environment, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the core responsibilities of an ACO to ensure animal welfare and public safety. It prioritizes gathering objective information before making a judgment, which is crucial for accurate reporting and appropriate action. This methodical approach is supported by the general principles of animal welfare legislation, which often mandate that ACOs act based on evidence of harm or distress. Ethically, it upholds the duty of care owed to animals. An incorrect approach that involves immediate intervention based solely on a single, potentially ambiguous sign, such as a mild tremor, fails to meet professional standards. This could lead to unnecessary stress for the animal, potential damage to property, or an unwarranted escalation of resources. It bypasses the critical step of differential diagnosis, which is essential in animal behavior assessment. Such an approach could also lead to a violation of animal welfare regulations if the intervention is not justified by clear evidence of suffering. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the observed behavior as normal without further investigation, is also professionally unacceptable. This neglects the ACO's duty to investigate potential welfare concerns. If the observed behavior is indeed a sign of distress, this inaction could result in prolonged suffering for the animal, potentially violating animal cruelty or neglect statutes, demonstrates a lack of diligence and a failure to uphold the protective mandate of the ACO role. A third incorrect approach, which is to rely solely on the owner's subjective assessment of the animal's well-being without independent observation, is equally problematic. While owner input is valuable, it cannot replace the objective assessment of a trained professional. Owners may be unaware of subtle signs of distress, or they may intentionally downplay them. An ACO must conduct their own assessment to ensure the animal's welfare is not compromised, adhering to the principle that the animal's condition is the primary concern. This approach risks overlooking critical welfare issues and failing to enforce relevant animal protection laws. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Initial observation. Observe the animal from a distance, noting general demeanor, posture, vocalizations, and interaction with its environment. 2. Detailed assessment. If initial observation raises concerns, approach cautiously and conduct a more detailed behavioral assessment, looking for specific signs of distress, e.g., panting, trembling, lethargy, aggression, avoidance, changes in appetite or thirst, abnormal grooming. 3. Environmental evaluation. Assess the animal's living conditions for potential stressors or hazards, e.g., inadequate shelter, lack of food/water, presence of other animals, noise. Temperature. 4. Information gathering. If appropriate and safe, gather information from the owner or other witnesses, but always verify this information with independent observation. 5. Documentation. Meticulously document all observations, assessments, and actions taken. 6. Action plan. Based on the gathered evidence, determine the appropriate course of action, which may range from education and advice to issuing warnings, confiscating the animal, or initiating legal proceedings, always in accordance with applicable laws and regulations. Question 9. Stakeholder feedback indicates a community member has reported concerns about the living conditions and apparent lack of care for a dog housed in a prominent local politician's backyard. The reports suggest the dog is often left in extreme weather without adequate shelter or water and appears underweight. The politician's staff has contacted the Animal Control Agency, stating the reports are unfounded and that the dog is well cared for, implying that an investigation would be an unwelcome political inconvenience. As a certified animal control officer, CACO, what is the most appropriate course of action to ethically and legally address this situation? Option A. Conduct a thorough, impartial investigation of the reported conditions, prioritizing the animal's welfare and adhering to all relevant state statutes and agency protocols for animal neglect and cruelty, regardless of the owner's political standing. Option B. Immediately seize the dog based on the initial report, without conducting a full assessment or gathering further evidence to ensure its immediate safety. Option C. Dismiss the complaint outright, citing the politician's influence and the lack of direct personal observation of mistreatment, and advise the reporting party to refrain from making further unsubstantiated claims. Option D. Inform the politician's staff that the agency has received the complaint and will monitor the situation from a distance, relying on their assurances that the dog is being cared for to avoid political repercussions. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough, impartial investigation of the reported conditions, prioritizing the animal's welfare and adhering to all relevant state statutes and agency protocols for animal neglect and cruelty, regardless of the owner's political standing. Explanation. This scenario presents a common ethical dilemma for animal control officers, CACO, where conflicting interests arise between animal welfare and human convenience or perceived property rights. The challenge lies in balancing the legal mandate to enforce animal control ordinances with the ethical imperative to ensure the humane treatment of animals, especially when faced with public pressure or differing interpretations of what constitutes humane. The correct approach prioritizes the animal's immediate welfare and adheres to established ethical guidelines for animal handling and care, as well as relevant state statutes concerning animal cruelty and neglect. This involves a thorough, objective assessment of the animal's condition and environment, followed by appropriate intervention based on evidence and legal authority. This approach represents best professional practice because it upholds the ACO's duty to protect animals from suffering, aligns with the principles of responsible animal stewardship, and ensures compliance with the law, thereby maintaining public trust in the animal control agency. An incorrect approach that involves ignoring the reported concerns due to the owner's status or perceived influence is a direct violation of the ethical duty to treat all animals equitably and without bias. It fails to uphold the legal mandate to investigate potential animal welfare violations, regardless of the owner's social standing. This approach risks enabling ongoing animal neglect or cruelty, which is a serious ethical and legal failing. Another incorrect approach, which involves immediate confiscation without a proper assessment or due process, may also be problematic. While the intent might be to protect the animal, it could overstep the ACO's authority if the situation does not meet the legal threshold for seizure. This could lead to legal challenges and undermine the agency's credibility. It also fails to consider less drastic interventions that might achieve the same welfare outcome while respecting the owner's rights. A third incorrect approach, which involves dismissing the concerns based solely on the owner's assurances without independent verification, neglects the core responsibility of an ACO to investigate reports of animal mistreatment. It places undue trust in the owner's subjective statements over objective observation and evidence, potentially leaving the animal in a harmful situation. This approach fails to act diligently in protecting animal welfare and can be seen as a dereliction of duty. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. 1. Acknowledge and document all stakeholder feedback. 2. Conduct a prompt, objective, and thorough on-site assessment of the animal's condition and environment, adhering to established protocols for humane investigation. 3. Consult relevant state statutes and local ordinances regarding animal cruelty, neglect, and welfare standards. 4. If evidence of neglect or cruelty is found, follow established procedures for intervention, which may include education, warnings, or, if legally justified, seizure of the animal. 5. Document all actions taken, observations made, and communications with stakeholders. 6. Maintain professional impartiality and focus on the animal's welfare and legal compliance. Question 10. Compliance review shows that a certified animal control officer, CACO, responded to a call regarding a found dog wandering near a busy intersection. The finder, who wishes to keep the dog if the owner is not found, is present. The dog appears healthy but is not wearing a collar or tags, and no microchip is immediately apparent. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the CACO to ensure compliance with lost and found protocols? Option A. Immediately take possession of the dog, conduct a thorough physical examination and scan for a microchip, and initiate the agency's standard lost animal intake and owner search procedures. Option B. Advise the finder that they can keep the dog if they are willing to search for the owner themselves and report back if successful. Option C. Inform the finder that since the dog has no identification, it is likely abandoned and can be surrendered to the agency for immediate adoption processing. Option D. Allow the finder to take the dog home temporarily, while the CACO makes a few phone calls to local shelters to see if any reports match. The correct answer is B. Advise the finder that they can keep the dog if they are willing to search for the owner themselves and report back if successful. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for animal control officers, CACO, involving a found animal with no immediate identification. The core difficulty lies in balancing the urgency of reuniting a potentially lost pet with its owner against the need to adhere to established legal and ethical protocols for found animals. Mismanagement can lead to animal suffering, owner distress, and potential legal repercussions for the agency. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes immediate intake, thorough documentation, and prompt initiation of the legally mandated search for the owner. This aligns with the principles of responsible animal sheltering and the legal requirements for handling stray animals, which typically involve a holding period to allow for owner reclamation. Documenting the animal's condition and any identifying marks is crucial for both the search and for potential future legal proceedings. Contacting local veterinary clinics and shelters is a proactive step that significantly increases the chances of a swift reunion. demonstrating best professional practice by leveraging available resources and adhering to established lost and found protocols. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves releasing the animal to the finder without any formal intake or attempt to locate the owner. This violates the legal obligation to hold stray animals for a specified period, which is designed to give owners a chance to recover their lost pets. It also bypasses essential documentation, hindering any future attempts to identify the animal or its owner. Ethically, it disregards the potential distress of the rightful owner. Another incorrect approach is to delay intake and documentation, waiting for the finder to actively search for the owner themselves. This shifts the responsibility away from the official agency and can lead to significant delays in reuniting the animal, potentially causing undue stress and suffering for both the animal and its owner. It fails to uphold the agency's duty of care and its role in managing stray populations. A third incorrect approach is to immediately assume the animal is abandoned and proceed with adoption or euthanasia without a proper search for the owner. This is a premature and legally unsound action. Most jurisdictions mandate a reasonable holding period and active efforts to locate the owner before an animal can be considered legally abandoned. This approach disregards the owner's rights and the animal's welfare. Professional reasoning. When faced with a found animal, ACOs must follow a systematic process. This begins with immediate intake and assessment of the animal's condition. Next, all available identification, such as microchips or tags, must be checked. Comprehensive documentation of the animal's appearance, behavior, and any found location is essential. The legal holding period must be observed, and during this time, proactive steps to locate the owner must be undertaken, including checking lost pet databases, contacting local veterinary clinics and shelters, and potentially posting notices. This structured approach ensures legal compliance, ethical treatment of animals, and the best possible outcome for both the animal and its community. Question 11. The efficiency study reveals that Animal Control Officer Miller is tasked with retrieving a stray dog reported by a concerned citizen. The citizen states the dog is friendly but a bit skittish. Upon arrival, Officer Miller observes the dog pacing nervously in a fenced yard, its tail tucked and ears flattened. The owner, who is present, insists the dog is perfectly fine and just needs to be coaxed. Officer Miller needs to safely secure the dog for transport. Which of the following approaches best reflects professional best practices for handling and restraining this animal? Option A. Rely solely on the owner's assurance that the dog is fine and proceed with a direct, firm grab to secure the dog's collar, assuming the owner's assessment is accurate. Option B. Use a catch pole to quickly and decisively loop around the dog's neck from a distance to ensure immediate control and prevent any potential escape or defensive action. Option C. Immediately attempt to corner the dog and apply a slip lead, as the owner stated the dog is friendly and the priority is to get it secured quickly. Option D. Approach the dog slowly and calmly, speaking in a soft tone, and allow the dog to approach the officer first, observing its body language for any signs of escalating fear or aggression before attempting any physical restraint. The correct answer is D. Approach the dog slowly and calmly, speaking in a soft tone, and allow the dog to approach the officer first, observing its body language for any signs of escalating fear or aggression before attempting any physical restraint. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for animal control officers, CACO, where conflicting information from different sources, owners report vs. animals' behavior, necessitates careful on-site assessment. The officer must balance the need for effective restraint to ensure safety for themselves, the animal, and the public, with the ethical obligation to minimize animal stress and fear. The potential for a bite or scratch is a constant risk, requiring a proactive and informed approach to handling. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a calm, non-threatening demeanor and a gradual, observation-based method of restraint. This aligns with best professional practices that emphasize de-escalation and building trust, even in a potentially volatile situation. By observing the animal's body language and responding with gentle, controlled movements, the ACO minimizes the animal's perceived threat, increasing the likelihood of successful and humane handling. This approach is consistent with the ethical guidelines of animal welfare and the practical requirements of safe animal control, aiming to achieve the objective without causing undue distress or injury. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately resorting to forceful restraint techniques without attempting to assess the animal's temperament or environment. This demonstrates a failure to adhere to ethical principles of minimizing animal suffering and can be seen as a violation of the duty of care. It also increases the risk of the animal becoming more agitated and potentially aggressive, leading to injury for both the animal and the officer, and failing to meet the standard of professional competence. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the owner's potentially biased or inaccurate assessment of the animal's temperament. While owner input is valuable, an ACO's professional responsibility is to conduct an independent evaluation. Ignoring the animal's observable behavior in favor of the owner's description can lead to underestimating the animal's stress level or potential for aggression, resulting in an unsafe handling situation and a breach of professional duty. A third incorrect approach might involve using excessive force or equipment that is not appropriate for the animal's size, species, or temperament. This not only violates ethical guidelines regarding humane treatment, but also increases the risk of physical injury to the animal and can be considered negligent. Professional practice demands the use of the least restrictive means necessary for safe control. Professional reasoning. When faced with conflicting information, ACOs should employ a systematic decision-making process. This involves 1. Initial observation from a safe distance to assess the animal's overall demeanor and environment. 2. Gradual approach, continuing to observe body language for signs of stress or aggression. 3. Communication with the owner to gather further context, but not as the sole basis for action. 4. Selection of the least restrictive, most appropriate restraint method based on the observed behavior and species. 5. Continuous reassessment of the animal's response throughout the handling process. This methodical approach ensures safety, promotes animal welfare, and upholds professional standards. Question 12. The performance metrics show a significant gap in the successful identification of animals within the jurisdiction, impacting lost pet recovery rates and public health surveillance. Considering the regulatory framework for animal identification, which of the following approaches best addresses this implementation challenge? Option A. Focus solely on increasing the number of animal shelters and adoption centers, assuming that increased intake will indirectly lead to better identification practices through their intake procedures. Option B. Immediately issue citations to all owners of unidentified animals, with escalating fines for repeat offenses, and cease all other efforts until full compliance is achieved. Option C. Mandate microchipping as the sole acceptable form of animal identification and conduct random sweeps to check for compliance, imposing penalties on any animal found without a microchip. Option D. Implement a comprehensive public education campaign detailing the importance of animal identification, offering a variety of approved identification methods, e.g., tags, microchips, and integrating identification verification into routine services like licensing and stray intake. The correct answer is D. Implement a comprehensive public education campaign detailing the importance of animal identification, offering a variety of approved identification methods, e.g., tags, microchips, and integrating identification verification into routine services like licensing and stray intake. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge for animal control agencies, ensuring effective and consistent animal identification practices across a diverse range of animal types and owner circumstances. The challenge lies in balancing the need for accurate identification for public safety, lost animal recovery, and disease control with the practicalities of owner compliance, resource limitation, and varying levels of animal accessibility. The performance metrics highlighting a gap in identification underscore a systemic issue that requires a strategic and compliant approach, not just a reactive one. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach focuses on a multifaceted strategy that directly addresses the identified performance gap by emphasizing education, accessibility, and enforcement, all within the established regulatory framework for animal identification. This approach recognizes that successful implementation requires more than just mandating identification. It necessitates proactive engagement with the public to foster understanding and compliance. By offering various identification methods and providing clear guidance, the agency empowers owners to meet their responsibilities. Furthermore, integrating identification checks into routine services like licensing and stray intake ensures consistent application and data collection, which is crucial for tracking and improving identification rates. This aligns with the overarching goal of animal welfare and public safety, as mandated by animal control regulations. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach fails by solely focusing on punitive measures without addressing the underlying reasons for non-compliance. This can lead to resentment, further disengagement from owners, and potentially drive non-compliant individuals underground, making identification even more difficult. It neglects the educational and supportive aspects crucial for long-term success, and can be seen as an overreach of authority if not preceded by clear communication and opportunities for compliance. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize only one specific type of identification, such as microchipping, while ignoring other valid and potentially more accessible methods like visible tags. This approach is flawed because it fails to accommodate the diverse needs and capabilities of pet owners and the varied nature of animals. Regulations often allow for multiple forms of identification, and an overly restrictive policy can be difficult to enforce and may not be supported by the governing statutes, leading to legal challenges and reduced overall identification rates. A third incorrect approach involves neglecting to update identification protocols in line with technological advancements or changes in animal population demographics. This can lead to outdated and ineffective identification methods that do not adequately serve the purpose of reuniting lost pets or tracking disease. It represents a failure to adapt and maintain the efficacy of the identification program, potentially falling short of the spirit and intent of regulatory requirements for robust animal identification. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this challenge by first thoroughly understanding the specific regulatory requirements for animal identification within their jurisdiction. This involves reviewing statutes, ordinances, and any relevant agency guidelines. Next, they should analyze the performance metrics to pinpoint the exact nature of the identification gap. Based on this analysis, a comprehensive strategy should be developed that includes public education campaigns, provision of accessible and varied identification options, clear communication of requirements and consequences, and consistent enforcement integrated into existing operational procedures. Regular review and adaptation of the strategy based on ongoing performance data are essential for continuous improvement and sustained compliance. Question 13. Assessment of the appropriate response protocol for an unidentified wild animal exhibiting aggressive behavior near a residential area, considering the potential presence of a federally listed endangered species. Option A. Attempt to scare the animal away from the residential area using loud noises or other deterrents without attempting to identify it. Option B. Dispatch the animal immediately to eliminate any perceived threat to public safety, regardless of species identification. Option C. Capture the animal and release it into a nearby undeveloped area to reduce immediate human interaction. Option D. Initiate immediate capture and relocation to a designated wildlife rehabilitation center after consulting with state wildlife authorities regarding the species' protected status and appropriate handling procedures. Correct answer is D. Initiate immediate capture and relocation to a designated wildlife rehabilitation center after consulting with state wildlife authorities regarding the species' protected status and appropriate handling procedures. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between immediate public safety concerns and the long-term conservation mandates of endangered species legislation. Animal control officers, CACO, are often the first responders to animal-related incidents, and their actions can have significant consequences for both human well-being and the survival of protected species. The risk assessment must balance the immediate threat posed by an animal with the legal and ethical obligations to protect endangered wildlife. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, evidence-based assessment that considers all relevant factors, including species identification, potential threat level, and the applicability of the Endangered Species Act (ESA). This approach aligns with the legal framework by ensuring that actions taken are compliant with federal law, minimizing harm to protected species while still addressing public safety. It demonstrates a commitment to both public service and environmental stewardship, reflecting the dual responsibilities of an ACO. An incorrect approach that immediately assumes lethal force without proper identification or assessment fails to adhere to the ESA's prohibitions against harming or harassing listed species. This constitutes a regulatory failure, as it bypasses the legal requirements for handling endangered wildlife. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on public perception or convenience, without considering the legal implications of interacting with potentially endangered animals, is an ethical failure. It prioritizes expediency over legal compliance and responsible wildlife management. A third incorrect approach that involves relocating the animal without consulting wildlife authorities or understanding the species' habitat risks introducing the animal into an unsuitable environment, potentially leading to its demise or the disruption of existing ecosystems, which is both a regulatory and ethical failure. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic risk assessment. This includes 1. Immediate containment and observation to ensure public safety. 2. Accurate species identification, consulting available resources or experts if necessary. 3. Determining the level of threat posed by the animal. 4. Researching the species' protected status under the ESA and any relevant state or local laws. 5. Consulting with wildlife agencies or experts for guidance on handling and disposition. And 6. Taking action that is legally compliant, ethically sound, and minimizes harm to both humans and the animal. Question 14. Comparative studies suggest that the application of animal control laws can vary significantly based on governmental levels. An animal control officer, CACO, in a municipality discovers a situation involving the suspected neglect of exotic animals. While federal regulations provide general guidelines for the humane treatment of animals, the state has enacted specific statutes addressing the ownership and care of exotic species. And the municipality has a local ordinance that outlines general animal nuisance and abandonment procedures. The ACO must determine the primary legal framework to guide their investigation and potential enforcement actions. Which approach best ensures regulatory compliance and effective action? Option A. Proceed based on personal interpretation of all applicable laws, assuming a unified intent across federal, state, and local regulations. Option B. Prioritize the state statutes concerning exotic animals, as they are the most specific to the situation, and consult with the state animal welfare agency and local legal counsel for guidance on enforcement procedures. Option C. Focus solely on the local ordinance, as it is the most immediate set of rules governing animal control within the municipality. Option D. Rely exclusively on federal guidelines, as they represent the overarching legal framework for animal welfare across the nation. The correct answer is B. Prioritize the state statutes concerning exotic animals, as they are the most specific to the situation, and consult with the state animal welfare agency and local legal counsel for guidance on enforcement procedures. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an animal control officer, CACO, to navigate potential conflicts between different levels of government authority regarding animal welfare and public safety. The ACO must understand the hierarchy of laws and regulations to ensure their actions are legally sound and effective. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to the most specific and applicable legal framework, which is typically state law when it provides greater protections or stricter regulations than federal law, and local ordinances when they further refine or implement state mandates. This ensures compliance with all applicable laws and avoids overstepping jurisdictional boundaries. By consulting with the state agency and local legal counsel, the ACO demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and accurate legal interpretation, safeguarding both the animals and the public while protecting the agency from legal repercussions. An incorrect approach that relies solely on federal guidelines would be professionally unacceptable because federal laws often set minimum standards, and state or local laws may impose more stringent requirements. Ignoring these higher standards could lead to inadequate animal protection or failure to address specific local concerns. Another incorrect approach that focuses only on local ordinances might be insufficient if state law provides broader protections or mandates specific actions that local ordinances do not cover. This could result in a failure to meet state-level responsibilities. A third incorrect approach that involves acting solely on personal interpretation of laws without seeking clarification from appropriate legal authorities is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This can lead to misapplication of laws, improper enforcement, and potential legal challenges against the ACO and their agency. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a hierarchical legal analysis. First, identify the most specific and applicable laws, local ordinances, then state statutes, then federal regulations. Second, determine if there are any conflicts or gaps between these levels. Third, consult with legal counsel, local and/or state, to clarify interpretation and ensure compliance with the highest applicable standard. Fourth, act in accordance with the legally established framework, prioritizing the protection of animal welfare and public safety. Question 15. The risk matrix shows a potential for increased public health concerns and animal welfare issues stemming from a new pet grooming business operating without clear documentation of animal handling permits. The business, Paws and Polish, houses several animals on site overnight for extended grooming sessions, including exotic birds and reptiles, in addition to common domestic pets. The State Animal Welfare Act and local ordinances mandate specific licensing for businesses involved in animal boarding and care, with varying requirements based on species and number of animals. The ACO has received a complaint from a neighbor concerned about noise and potential odors. Which of the following actions best represents the appropriate response for the certified animal control officer? Option A. Contact the local health department to report potential sanitation issues and request they investigate Paws and Polish for health code violations related to animal housing. Option B. Immediately issue a citation for operating without the required permits and demand the business cease overnight boarding until proper licensing is obtained. Option C. Conduct a thorough review of the State Animal Welfare Act and local ordinances to determine if Paws and Polish's activities, particularly overnight housing of exotic species, fall under regulated categories requiring specific permits or licenses, and then engage with the owner to explain any identified requirements and guide them toward compliance. Option D. Advise the business owner that, while overnight housing is concerning, no immediate action can be taken without definitive proof of a violation of specific licensing statutes. The correct answer is B. Immediately issue a citation for operating without the required permits and demand the business cease overnight boarding until proper licensing is obtained. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for animal control officers, CACO, where a business operates in a gray area regarding animal licensing and permitting, potentially impacting public safety and animal welfare. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting and applying the specific licensing and permitting requirements of the relevant jurisdiction, which in this case, we assume to be governed by a hypothetical State Animal Welfare Act and associated local ordinances. The ACO must balance enforcement with education and ensure compliance without overstepping their authority or creating undue hardship. The correct approach involves a thorough investigation to determine if the business's activities fall under any regulated categories requiring specific permits or licenses. This includes consulting the State Animal Welfare Act and local ordinances to identify definitions of animal-related businesses, species requiring special permits, and any exemptions. The ACO should then engage with the business owner to explain the relevant regulations and guide them toward compliance, which may involve applying for the necessary permits or licenses. This approach upholds the law, protects public health and animal welfare, and fosters a cooperative relationship between regulatory bodies and businesses. An incorrect approach would be to immediately issue a citation or demand closure without a proper understanding of the regulations. This fails to acknowledge that the business might be operating legally under a different classification or that a grace period for compliance might be appropriate. Another incorrect approach is to assume the business is non-compliant based on a superficial observation without verifying specific licensing requirements for the types and numbers of animals present. This could lead to an unwarranted enforcement action, damaging the ACO's credibility and potentially resulting in legal challenges. Ignoring the situation entirely is also a failure, as it neglects the ACO's duty to ensure public safety and animal welfare by allowing potential violations to persist. Professionals should approach such situations by first gathering information, consulting the relevant legal framework, and then engaging in a dialogue with the individual or business. This systematic process ensures that enforcement actions are based on a solid understanding of the law and are applied fairly and consistently. Question 16. To address the challenge of responding to a report of a loose dog exhibiting agitated behavior in a public park, which of the following approaches best demonstrates an understanding of animal behavior for effective and safe animal control? Option A. Observe the dog's full body language, including posture, tail position, ear set, and vocalizations, while considering the surrounding environment and potential triggers for its behavior. Option B. Focus only on the dog's barking, interpreting it as a direct indicator of imminent attack. Option C. Assume the dog is aggressive based on its agitated state and immediately attempt to corner it to prevent further public disturbance. Option D. Rely solely on the dog's breed and size to predict its behavior and determine the appropriate response. The correct answer is A. Observe the dog's full body language, including posture, tail position, ear set, and vocalizations, while considering the surrounding environment and potential triggers for its behavior. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because animal control officers frequently encounter animals exhibiting behaviors that can be misinterpreted, leading to potentially dangerous situations for both the animal and the public. The officer must quickly assess the animal's emotional state and motivations to ensure public safety, while also acting in the animal's best interest, adhering to the principles of humane treatment and effective control. This requires a nuanced understanding of animal behavior beyond simple identification of species. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive assessment of the animal's body language and environmental context. This aligns with the ethical imperative to avoid unnecessary harm and to make informed decisions based on observable evidence, as mandated by animal welfare regulations and professional conduct guidelines for certified animal control officers. By considering multiple behavioral cues and the surrounding environment, the officer can differentiate between fear-based aggression, territoriality, or playfulness, leading to a more appropriate and safe intervention. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the animal's vocalizations fails to account for the wide range of meanings vocalizations can have and ignores crucial visual cues. This could lead to misinterpreting a warning bark as purely aggressive, potentially escalating the situation unnecessarily, or failing to recognize a genuine threat. Ethically, this is a failure to exercise due diligence in assessing the animal's state. Another incorrect approach that assumes all animals of a certain species will behave identically is a dangerous oversimplification. Individual animal personalities, past experiences, and immediate environmental factors significantly influence behavior. Relying on such generalizations violates the principle of individualized assessment and can lead to inappropriate handling or response, potentially causing harm or failing to protect the public. This is a regulatory failure in terms of responsible animal management. A third incorrect approach that solely considers the animal's size as an indicator of threat overlooks the fact that even small animals can exhibit defensive or aggressive behaviors, and larger animals may be docile. This approach is not grounded in behavioral science and can lead to underestimating or overestimating a threat, both of which are professionally unsound and potentially dangerous. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic observation of the animal's entire body language, including posture, tail carriage, ear position, eye contact, and vocalizations, while simultaneously evaluating the environmental context. This multifaceted approach allows for more accurate interpretation of the animal's intent and emotional state, guiding the officer towards the safest and most humane course of action, in accordance with established animal control protocols and ethical standards. Question 17. Quality control measures reveal that a certified animal control officer, CACO, received a complaint from a neighbor alleging an animal is being neglected due to being left outside in inclement weather without adequate shelter. The reporting party states the animal appears thin and lethargic. The CACO is tasked with investigating this report. Which of the following actions best represents the appropriate initial response to uphold animal welfare and regulatory compliance? Option A. Conduct a thorough, objective on-site observation of the animal and its living conditions, documenting the presence or absence of adequate shelter, food, water, and the animal's general physical condition and demeanor before any further action is taken. Option B. Immediately issue a warning to the owner and require them to bring the animal inside, citing the neighbor's report as sufficient evidence of neglect. Option C. Advise the owner that based on the neighbor's complaint, They are in violation of animal welfare ordinances and must immediately provide indoor housing for the animal to avoid penalties. Option D. Contact the reporting neighbor for further details about the animal's behavior and the owner's typical care practices, without directly observing the animal or its environment. The correct answer is B. Immediately issue a warning to the owner and require them to bring the animal inside, citing the neighbor's report as sufficient evidence of neglect. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge for animal control officers, CACO, where conflicting information and potential welfare concerns require careful, evidence-based decision-making. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to address a reported animal welfare issue with the legal and ethical obligations to gather sufficient information, respect property rights, and avoid unnecessary intervention. The ACO must navigate potential biases in reporting, the subjective nature of assessing animal behavior, and the legal thresholds for intervention. The correct approach prioritizes a systematic, information-gathering process that respects due process and animal welfare principles. It involves direct observation, seeking corroborating evidence, and consulting relevant resources before making a determination. This aligns with the CACO role as an impartial investigator and enforcer of animal welfare laws, ensuring actions are justified and legally sound. It upholds the principle of innocent until proven guilty for the animal's owner and avoids premature or unfounded accusations. An incorrect approach that immediately assumes neglect based solely on a neighbor's complaint fails to adhere to the investigative standards expected of an ACO. It bypasses the crucial steps of observation and evidence gathering, potentially leading to unwarranted intrusion and distress for both the animal and the owner. This approach risks violating due process rights and could result in legal challenges. Another incorrect approach that relies on hearsay or unverified information without direct observation is equally problematic. ACOs are trained to be objective observers. Relying on secondhand accounts without independent verification undermines the integrity of the investigation and could lead to misjudgments. This approach fails to meet the burden of proof required for intervention. A third incorrect approach that focuses solely on the owner's perceived attitude rather than the animal's actual condition is a misapplication of welfare principles. While owner cooperation is important, the primary focus must always be on the animal's immediate welfare. Judging an owner's character without objective evidence of animal suffering is unprofessional and can lead to biased decision-making. The professional decision-making process for ACOs in such situations should involve 1. Receiving and documenting the complaint. 2. Conducting a thorough, objective on-site assessment of the animal's condition and environment. 3. Gathering additional information from relevant parties if necessary and appropriate. 4. Consulting with supervisors or subject matter experts if the situation is complex or ambiguous. And 5. Making a determination based on observed evidence and applicable laws and regulations. This structured approach ensures fairness, accuracy, and adherence to professional standards. Question 18. Process analysis reveals a report of multiple stray dogs exhibiting lethargic behavior, coughing, and nasal discharge in a densely populated urban park. Local veterinarians have recently noted an increase in respiratory illness among domestic pets in the surrounding neighborhoods. As a certified animal control officer, CACO, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action to protect public health and animal welfare? Option A. Euthanize all observed stray animals exhibiting symptoms to prevent any potential spread of disease without further investigation or consultation. Option B. Immediately isolate the affected animals. Contact local veterinary public health officials for guidance on diagnostic testing and potential zoonotic risks, and implement public advisories regarding the observed symptoms and precautions. Option C. Advise park visitors to avoid contact with stray animals and monitor for symptoms, but take no further immediate action until a formal complaint is filed by a specific individual. Option D. Attempt to capture and rehome the stray animals quickly to alleviate overcrowding at the local shelter, assuming the symptoms are minor and not a public health concern. The correct answer is B. Immediately isolate the affected animals. Contact local veterinary public health officials for guidance on diagnostic testing and potential zoonotic risks, and implement public advisories regarding the observed symptoms and precautions. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an animal control officer, CACO, to balance immediate public safety concerns with the ethical and legal obligations regarding animal welfare and disease control. The ACO must act decisively to prevent the spread of a potentially zoonotic disease, while also ensuring that any actions taken are in accordance with established protocols and legal mandates, avoiding unnecessary harm to animals or the public. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, evidence-based response that aligns with public health directives and animal welfare laws. This involves accurate identification of the disease, consultation with relevant authorities, veterinarians, public health officials, and implementation of containment and prevention strategies that are both effective and humane. This approach upholds the ACO's responsibility to protect both animal and human health, adhering to the principles of responsible animal management and public service. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate euthanasia without proper diagnosis or consultation fails to uphold the ethical obligation to avoid unnecessary suffering and may violate laws regarding animal cruelty or proper disease management procedures. It bypasses critical steps in disease investigation and containment, potentially leading to misdiagnosis and inappropriate resource allocation. Another incorrect approach that involves ignoring the reported symptoms or delaying a response due to resource limitations poses a significant public health risk. This failure to act promptly can allow a contagious disease to spread unchecked, endangering more animals and potentially humans, and would be a direct violation of the ACO's duty to protect public safety and animal health. A third incorrect approach that involves implementing unverified or non-standard containment measures without expert guidance could be ineffective and potentially harmful. It demonstrates a lack of professional due diligence and could lead to the spread of the disease or create new risks, failing to meet the standards of care expected of a certified professional. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear protocol. 1. Assess the immediate threat to public safety and animal health. 2. Gather all available information about the animal's and symptoms. 3. Consult with veterinary professionals and public health authorities for accurate diagnosis and guidance. 4. Implement containment and prevention strategies based on expert advice and established protocols. 5. Document all actions taken and communicate effectively with stakeholders. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, legally compliant, and ethically sound. Question 19. The performance metrics show a recent increase in incidents where animal behavior assessments are challenged by owners, leading to lengthy appeals processes. A CACO is tasked with assessing a dog exhibiting what the owner describes as playful nipping during interactions. The CACO has observed the dog for a total of 15 minutes across 2 separate visits, noting that the dog appears excited and jumps when approached. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory requirements for behavior assessment in this scenario? Option A. Rely primarily on the owner's description of playful nipping and the observed excitement, concluding that the behavior is not a significant public safety concern without further investigation. Option B. Perform a single, brief observation session focusing on whether the dog exhibits overt aggression, and if not, deem the behavior acceptable for return to the owner. Option C. Immediately recommend containment measures and a formal behavior modification plan based solely on the owner's report of nipping and the dog's jumping, without a comprehensive assessment of the behavior's context or severity. Option D. Conduct a more extensive behavioral evaluation over multiple sessions, observing the dog in various contexts and noting specific bite inhibition, body language, and response to stimuli, while also documenting the owner's training efforts and the dog's history. The correct answer is D. Conduct a more extensive behavioral evaluation over multiple sessions, observing the dog in various contexts and noting specific bite inhibition, body language, and response to stimuli, while also documenting the owner's training efforts and the dog's history. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the Certified Animal Control Officer, CACO, must interpret complex animal behavior to make a determination that has significant implications for the animal's welfare and public safety. The CACO assessment directly influences decisions regarding the animal's future, such as whether it can be safely returned to its owner, placed for adoption, or requires euthanasia. This requires a nuanced understanding of behavior assessment techniques, moving beyond simple observation to a more systematic and evidence-based evaluation. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principles of responsible animal control and welfare as outlined in relevant U.S. state statutes and model legislation, such as those promoted by the National Animal Control Association, NACA. A systematic behavioral assessment, incorporating multiple observation periods, consideration of environmental factors, and documentation of specific behaviors, provides a more objective and reliable basis for decision-making. This approach minimizes subjective bias and ensures that decisions are grounded in observable evidence, thereby upholding the CACO duty to protect both animals and the public. It also supports due process for the animal owner by providing a clear, documented rationale for any actions taken. An incorrect approach that relies solely on a single, brief observation fails to capture the full spectrum of an animal's behavior. This can lead to misinterpretations, particularly if the animal is exhibiting fear-based or stress-related behaviors due to the unfamiliar environment or the presence of the CACO. Such an approach is ethically problematic, as it may result in an animal being misclassified, potentially leading to unnecessary euthanasia or a failure to identify a genuine public safety risk. It also violates the spirit of regulatory frameworks that emphasize thoroughness and accuracy in animal assessments. Another incorrect approach that focuses only on the owner's subjective report without independent behavioral observation is also professionally unacceptable. While owner input is valuable, it can be influenced by personal biases, a desire to protect the animal, or a lack of objective understanding of animal behavior. Relying solely on this information bypasses the CACO professional expertise and the requirement for an objective, evidence-based assessment mandated by regulatory guidelines. This can lead to flawed decisions that compromise animal welfare or public safety. Finally, an approach that prioritizes immediate resolution over thorough assessment, perhaps due to time constraints or pressure, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Animal welfare laws and public safety regulations require a diligent and comprehensive evaluation. Rushing the assessment process can result in overlooking critical behavioral indicators, leading to potentially dangerous outcomes or unjust treatment of the animal. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to a structured, multifaceted assessment protocol, prioritizing accuracy and ethical considerations over expediency. This includes understanding the specific legal requirements for animal behavior assessments in the governing jurisdiction, utilizing validated assessment tools where applicable, and maintaining meticulous records of all observations and findings. Question 20. Consider a scenario where you, as a certified animal control officer, respond to a call about a stray dog found wandering near a busy intersection. The dog appears healthy but is clearly distressed. Upon safely securing the animal, you notice a small lump under its skin, consistent with a microchip implant. What is the most appropriate course of action to take regarding the microchip information? Option A. Assume the microchip is outdated or unregistered and proceed with standard stray intake procedures, holding the animal for the legally mandated period before considering adoption. Option B. Scan the dog for a microchip, but if the initial scan is unclear, decide not to pursue further identification efforts to avoid potential complications with owner disputes. Option C. Attempt to visually identify any tags on the dog's collar, as these are often more reliable for immediate owner identification than microchips. Option D. Scan the dog for a microchip, record the chip number, and use a universal microchip lookup tool to identify the registered owner and initiate contact. The correct answer is D. Scan the dog for a microchip, record the chip number, and use a universal microchip lookup tool to identify the registered owner and initiate contact. Explanation: Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for animal control officers, CACO, involving a stray animal with a microchip. The primary difficulty lies in accurately identifying the animal's owner and ensuring the animal's welfare, while adhering to legal and ethical obligations. Misinterpreting microchip data or failing to follow established protocols can lead to prolonged separation of the pet from its owner, potential legal disputes, or even the animal being placed in a shelter unnecessarily. The ACO must navigate the technical aspect of reading the chip, the administrative process of contacting the registered owner, and the animal's immediate needs. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves systematically reading the microchip, verifying the data against a reliable registry, and then initiating contact with the registered owner using the provided contact information. This approach is grounded in the principle of reuniting lost pets with their rightful owners efficiently and humanely. It aligns with the ethical duty of care towards animals and the legal framework that often presumes ownership based on registration. Prompt and accurate identification of the owner is paramount to minimizing the animal's stress and the owner's distress. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be to assume the microchip is faulty or unreadable without attempting to scan it multiple times, or using a different scanner if available. This failure to perform a basic diagnostic step is a dereliction of duty and prevents the potential identification of the owner. Ethically, it prioritizes convenience over the animal's welfare. Another incorrect approach is to read the microchip, but then fail to contact the registered owner, perhaps due to a belief that the owner may have abandoned the animal, or because the ACO decides to hold the animal for a predetermined period before attempting contact. This violates the spirit and often the letter of animal control regulations, which mandate reasonable efforts to reunite lost pets. It also bypasses the legal presumption of ownership associated with a registered microchip. A third incorrect approach involves misinterpreting the microchip data, such as confusing manufacturer codes with owner information, or failing to cross-reference the chip number with a recognized microchip registry. This technical error can lead to incorrect owner identification or a false conclusion that the chip is unregistered, both of which hinder the reunification process and can result in the animal being treated as ownerless, leading to potential adoption or euthanasia when an owner might exist. This demonstrates a lack of diligence and competence in handling critical identification data. Professional reasoning. When encountering a microchip stray animal, an ACO should follow a clear protocol. 1. Attempt to scan the microchip using appropriate equipment. 2. If a chip is detected, record the chip number and attempt to read its data. 3. Access a recognized microchip registry, e.g., AHA Universal Pet Microchip Lookup, to identify the chip manufacturer and retrieve owner contact information. 4. Contact the registered owner promptly using the provided details. 5. If contact is unsuccessful, follow established agency procedures for further attempts and notification. This systematic process ensures all avenues for reunification are explored, upholding both legal requirements and ethical responsibilities.